Hiring for your small business? If you're not looking for professionals on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. That's like looking for your car keys in a fish tank. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't even visit other leading job sites. So start looking in the right place. With LinkedIn, you can hire professionals like a professional. Post your free job on linkedin.com/achieve today.
George Clooney and Brad Pitt's new movie, Wolves, is on Apple TV Plus September 27th.
That's where I want you to be now.
So if you want to see George Clooney and Brad Pitt, go to Apple TV Plus.
You got to start the story there.
Or if you want to see Brad Pitt and George Clooney, go to Apple TV Plus.
I am enjoying the show.
And if you want to see their new movie, Wolves.
You can't do it, I'm going to help you out. I can do it, so do it.
Definitely go to Apple TV Plus.
Admit it, it's cool. Okay, fine, it was very cool.
Wolves, streaming September 27th on Apple TV Plus. Rated R.
Hey there, Vault Dwellers. Follow us as we take a topic from the Fallout universe and discuss it in a group of diverse individuals. We are the Fallout Roundtable. Join us. The conversation has already started.
Good morning, Vault Dwellers. We are back for episode 6 of The Trap, called The Trap. This is the Fallout Roundtable episode rewind. Is that what we decided?
Something like that.
Yeah, sounded good. I'm Sassy Lady. This is Sulior, and we're going to go in our deep dive of episode 6 of the Fallout series on Prime. If you would like to chat with us about the series, any of the episodes, you can reach the show at Fallout RTB on Twitter. You can reach me at Sassy Lady 1103. You can reach him at Ian Gold 08.
Mm-hmm.
I get it?
Yep.
You can email the show, falloutrtb@gmail.com. You can find us anywhere. Just message, tweet, comment, DM, whatever. We're there. And we will be happy to chat because this is one of our favorite things ever, in case you haven't been able to tell.
Absolutely.
Absolutely love this. At this time in recording, I understand that we're having some technical difficulties with episode 3. It is up.
That was weird.
Fine on YouTube.
Yeah.
It's
along with other, like, I'm sure the rest of them are too. They're a little bit behind.
Yeah, well, that part of that was my fault because my drive was full and I was having a hard time getting it uploaded to Jax's, who edits everything. And it's in the drive. It plays perfectly fine. We were playing with it last night trying to re-upload it. But for some reason, it goes to Megaphone and Megaphone turns it into gibberish. And I don't know why. It didn't do it with the others. So they're going to play with that and see what they can get done so it can get up to Spotify and all the other podcasting platforms. But, it is on YouTube and it works great. So you can catch it there if you're kind of jonesing to figure out what the heck happened on episode 3, right? Episode 3 that got junked up, I think. Sorry, dog issues.
I have no idea what happened with that. It was just, it was some.
It sounded like an alien
scrambled sound, and
like it was coming from the Zetans, whatever. Yeah,
it wasn't the 3 Count Thoughts ad. It was another ad.
It was an ad from Maverick. Thought it was an ad for a podcast that was no longer. So that was interesting.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because he was looking at it and he was like, I wonder why they put that in there. Because normally Jax's hand adds the ads. And apparently Megaphone decided we needed that ad put in there. So I don't know. We were looking at it last night instead of recording because everyone was otherwise engaged and we didn't really have a topic. So we were working on a big thing for next week, which you'll find out Thursday with the regular show. So we worked on that last night instead of recording because we figured we're backlogged enough on these episodes that we can we'll do that. So, and excuse me, I have a cough today. Every single bloody person that I work with is sick and they've been out this week. So I guess it's my turn to go down. I don't know. But I'm off this weekend. Thank the Lord. I don't have to disappoint anyone. My dog is being a butt right here, so I hope she's not too distracting. Behave. All right. So jumping in to this episode, we open up to the Galaxy News theme. Like, what do you call them? Like a spread, like a banner. That's what I'm trying to think of.
Yeah, banner.
The banner. And that was cool to see the Galaxy News banner, like kind of flash across, like we're watching the news kind of thing was what popped up. And then it cuts to black with a single spotlight on Cooper Howard, which is cool. It's very cool. Very like, what's happening, you know? And he starts talking and he says, you know, I'm here to talk to you today, not about my own films, but about a modern marvel. And he starts talking about, you know, something that's not made by God, but by the humble man or something, you know, something modern and cool.
Yeah, it's like the ad that we saw in the trailer.
It's the ad we see from the trailers that everybody's like, oh my gosh. And the light, he says, how about some lights? And the lights come on and we see he's standing in front of the door of Vault 4. And this is a vault that we've never seen before. We don't know anything about Vault 4.
Right.
So he starts talking about Vault 4. He's walking through, you know, past the door. And he starts talking about the construction of it. And he says, I'm here with you today from the inside of 96JQ1164. I didn't know that vaults had like official designations like that, like model numbers. I just knew they had vault numbers. I didn't know they had like a model number. So that was interesting. And he starts talking about the amenities and the 3 foot thick, 3 feet thick, was it lead wall?
I think he said lead and some other metals.
And he knocks on the bump, bump, bump. Sounds very hollow for being lead, but he says it's strong enough to keep out the rads and the reds. And that was cute. He takes you down Sycamore Street where you can wave howdy to your 200 neighbors. So I guess this is a planned 200 capped vault. You know, they've got room for only 200 people. So knowing how many people are in the world, and we know that Vault Tech built 122 vaults, 200 people per, that's not a lot of people in the grand scheme of things. But this is just the United States. I don't know if Vault Tech is international or if there's the UK version of Vault Tech or the Russian version of Vault Tech or the China version. We don't know. Of course, we also don't know if the bombs actually went off anywhere but the US, but that's a whole nother discussion. That's another story. So he goes into one of the rooms so you can kind of get an idea of what it looks like. It looks like just a very tiny efficiency apartment. And he says, meet the Hawthorns. Hawthorns. Now, where did we see Lucy and Max go last episode?
They went into what was it called again?
Hawthorne Medical.
It was a medical facility because
it was Hawthorne Medical, owned by Vault Tech.
Max had been shot, and they got gassed and ended up in Vault 4. A vault. We don't know which one. But...
Oh, that's true. We didn't know which one. That's right. So Hawthorne Medical, and then these are Meet the Hawthorns. So I thought that was an interesting tie-in. Do they own the place? Was it named for them? I mean, what's the story? So he's talking to them, and it turns out that they are scientists that are specializing in studying the effects of radiation on human DNA. And they're going to be living in the vault with 80 other volunteers for 5 years to show America that no matter what comes, they'll be ready. So they're voluntarily living in the vault before they have to. And they're going to start conducting their experiments. And this is what did she say? A scientist-governed community?
Something like that. Yeah, everybody there is scientists.
Yeah. And and I didn't catch it the first time I watched it, but after you see later episodes, then you watch it again and you hear her say, we're a scientist-governed community, and you realize, oh, oversight is not a bad thing in some situations. You'll see. So he starts, he keeps talking to them, and he gives out the Vault-Tec number because remember, this is a sales pitch. And so it's one of those. So go ahead and reserve your vault today. And he gives out the Vault-Tec number. Now, you can call or text this number. If you text the number, let me find mine because I actually did it. Let me find it because it's been a while since I did it. You can text the Vault-Tec number. And I got, thank you for texting Vault-Tec. The next available appointment is 33 weeks from now. Please stand by. Reply yes to get recurring marketing and other texts from Fallout and agree to community terms and privacy, blah, blah, blah. So I said yes. Congratulations. We may or may not be in touch if an appointment becomes available. And then it gives you a link to, no, it doesn't. It just gives you their phone number. Oh, no, I sent it. No, yeah, that's it. So that was cool. And I went ahead and saved it because some people have a theory that they're going to use this system, like if you text them, to maybe give you updates on upcoming games or things of that nature. Maybe because that 33 weeks coincides with the fall in almost 3 years, which is about the time frame that a game may or may not be dropping from Bethesda. And they like to release their games in the fall. So keep your ears and eyes open. It may.
I mean, yeah, we're still getting Elder
hope.
Scrolls 6 first. We do know that. But
Yeah,
who's to say they haven't been working on another Fallout game? Oh, I do.
Whatever.
I was an Elder Scrolls fan first, but I do love both.
So people who call the number, and you can look up Mrs. Fallout on any of her platforms like Twitter or Instagram or anything, and she'll have recordings of this because I didn't bother to record it. But if you call the number, you basically hear a man screaming.
That was funny.
It's very creepy.
They did that on the Fallout feed too. They did that live on the Fallout feed.
They did live on the, yeah. But a lot of people have done it and recorded it. I just remembered Mrs. Fallout because she's like on my mind because she just got her 1 million subscriber YouTube.
Yeah, that was awesome.
That was neat. So congratulations, Mrs. Fallout. And she's done a lot of cool stuff, and she's been doing it for 2 years. So that just shows you that a little hard work, putting yourself out there, pays off. So that was the Vault-Tec number. Well, once they cut, scene's good, and again we see what a nice guy Cooper is. He's like, congratulating his co-stars and the camera people. He's like, great take. Was that good? You did great. Lovely to meet you. He's such a nice man. He's very aware of complimenting the people he works with. He's not that star that's just like
greeting
everybody
and saying,
I'm going to my trailer.
Working with you. Yeah.
Yes. He's very humble, with his other co-stars, with his people that work, the behind the scenes people that never get any glory. He's talking to them and congratulating them, telling them they're doing a good job. He's not just, I'm the star, I'm off to my trailer. So he goes out in the hallway and he's looking for his wife and he sees she's talking to somebody and he gets waylaid by Bud Askins. Hey there, I'm Bud Askins. Mm-hmm. And he seems to be kind of like a fanboy, but really just a big know-it-all and talks a lot. And you can tell that Coop just wants to be anywhere but here.
Yeah, he doesn't seem to be a fan.
No, because, I think he's probably tired. He just wants to leave. He just wants to find his wife and bug out. But, Bud's just got him. And he, hey, I just wanted to meet you. I came here from Vault-Tec on Q3 from West Tech and blah, blah. Well, of course, this catches.
Yeah, I found out he works for West Tech.
Yeah, this catches his attention because he was with West Tech for like 10 years. And he says that he had worked on the T-45. Well, now he's got Coop's attention.
Cooper's like, hey, guess what? I wore one of those in Anchorage, and his Bud himself admits that they had a lot of design flaws.
Had some ridiculous design flaws, but they looked great.
Like, guess what? Those design flaws led to a lot of lost lives.
Mm-hmm.
So,
he said he saw a lot of good men and women give their lives for those design flaws. But that doesn't faze Bud one bit. Bud's like,
no.
yeah.
And he's like, yeah, I wasn't the one who did that personally.
Product
like,
management was never my bag.
It's like, you just said you did. So.
Like, that just wasn't, it didn't even faze him. He's like, yeah, that was never my thing, So he says now he's more about HR, R&D, like what the hell that is. So he says he oversees workflow optimization timelines. And he says most people think that he's all about scale. So he's all about overseeing workflow optimization timeline, all about scale. And he said most people think that scale is about increasing your global market share, but that's only thinking in 3 dimensions. He's thinking in 4, because he's progressive and he's on it. He's all about this. And he said because the ultimate weapon to destroy your competition is time. It's time. Mm-hmm. And the future of humanity is management. See, and these are 2 important concepts to remember.
Yeah, kind of hinting at stuff we'll see down the line, which we don't know at first. But
and this is, and Cooper Howard, for being a 200 and some year old ghoul, his brain does not rot because he remembers all of this. He remembers the whole ultimate weapon is time.
Which, how is that possible with all the drugs he's taken? But,
right?
Whole other deal.
I don't know how. His brain is not baked, but he remembers everything and everyone. The ultimate weapon to destroy your competition is time. And this is a big key phrase that we'll discuss. What episode? The next episode, probably
7 and 8 for sure.
Or 8, probably both. Yeah. So the ultimate weapon to destroy competition is time, and the future of humanity is management, which we're kind of starting to see a little bit when we see that 31 is managing 32 and 33. So that's kind of a little bit of that.
Well,
but we don't know the full story till
later
next episode.
Later on, we get some more hints.
We get a lot more.
Yeah.
But this is setting up Bud. This is setting up Bud and his core values and his core beliefs and his motives. So Coop's getting bored with this conversation. He said his piece about the T-45. Bud didn't care. He's all about talking about his new thing. And Coop does, he's zoning out. He's just, I don't care. So he's looking for his wife, and he says he gets himself away from Bud, and he goes and he finds her and he gives her a big hug, and she's like, I'm at work. I'm working. So, and I've heard some people talk about, I think we kind of touched on this before, that this is maybe a marriage of convenience, but he doesn't know about it. Like maybe he was set up.
Could be. Yeah.
So because sometimes she's kind of cold and stiff with him.
And she's like, her job with Vault-Tec seems to be really important to her.
It's more important to her than...
And she kind of explains why.
She does later. But it's like, for as much as she says she cares about her family, it does seem like she's not, and it could just be because she's not the huggy, touchy-feely type of person, maybe.
No.
And he obviously is. He's very affectionate. He loves his wife. It's very obvious. He doesn't mind who knows. And she's very proper, like not in public, don't touch me kind of person. And it's kind of, it's interesting to see, because the only thing she'll give him is like a little peck on the lips. She won't give him like a real kiss or anything. But he says, hey, let's get out of here. Let's go home, grab a couple of drinks and sit in the pool. And she says, we have a wrap party. He's like, a wrap party for this? It's not a movie, it's a commercial. He's like, a wrap party for this? She says, yes. And he says, okay, fine. We'll go for a couple hours. We'll shake some hands, and then we'll get out. And she says, it's at our house. Now, personally, I feel like, now I know with my husband, I would never get away with that kind of crap without telling him first. He would be like, what are you saying? You planned a party at our house and you didn't tell me. That would not be
mention
cool.
all the money spent on it.
Which I'm guessing if you're a movie star, that's not the biggest issue. But I mean, like, your personal space. Like, if you're going to have a big party in your personal space, like, and he seems to value his privacy. He's a movie star. He would value his privacy. If you're going to invite, like, your whole work people, whatever, over to the house, like, I would probably mention that before they're all, like, beating down my door. But what does he say? He says, the things I'm willing to do for you never cease to amaze me.
Right.
She is so lucky.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he wasn't even like, well, gosh, like, why didn't you say something? It doesn't say a word of reproach to her. He just says, okay. And he, and we can see, the next scene is the party, and we see the outside of the house. There's a lot of people milling around, like a lot of people. And the house looks very nice, like a place in the hills, looks very, there's money. And there's, we see him in his room, there's solitude. He's the only one, and he's getting ready, but he doesn't seem to be in a big rush. We know there's a lot of people there already, and he's kind of
can hear them,
hanging back. So we know he's not like all that excited about going to a party of her people. But I mean, he's probably thinking, well, she's been to a lot of Hollywood parties. It's probably not her thing either. So I'm sure he's trying to be supportive of her with her job, whatever. So he's going to do it. So we see him glancing at a paper, and the lower half, like the whole bottom half. And this is a big thing in print. I know we don't see a lot of papers these days, but top half, bottom half, it's all real estate on the paper and like where you get it and what's important and how much money is spent. But the whole bottom half of the page is the Vault-Tec ad with his face, his pose. And, he kind of looks at that, and we don't know really what he's thinking about it, but we see it. He's looking at it. And then we hear Roosevelt coming in the room, his dog. Mm-hmm. He's padding in. And he turns around and he says, I'm sorry, buddy, you can't come. I'm heading into enemy territory. So we know how he kind of feels about it, but he's going to do it anyway because, he loves his wife, and there's no limit to the things that he'll do for her, obviously.
Yeah.
And so I'm vibrating. So then he tells Roosevelt to be a good dog and go to bed, and he pets him, and the dog lays in his bed. And we see the headline of the paper. And on the headline, it says that the Reds are losing territory. So we kind of get like a little inside of how the war is going. Because remember, the war, like, I don't know what time frame we're in 2077 at this point in the show, but the war ended January of 2077.
I imagine it'd be the summer at this point, considering it's a pool party. But I mean, it's California as well. So yeah,
so
you never
it
know.
Could be it could be any time because it's California. But the Sino-American War went 2066 to 2077. So if the Americans are obviously on the track of, and for all we know, this could be late 2076. We don't know if it's actually 2077 yet. All we know is it's the buildup towards the Great War, that this is like the time preceding the Great War. It could be 2076. Right. We don't know. They don't really tell us that. True. And I guess maybe if I blew up the picture of the paper, I probably could have caught a date. I didn't. I should have. Maybe. If anybody did, tell us. I would like to know. So we see that headline, and then he heads off downstairs, and we see wall-sized movie posters. And I love the one that's at the top of the stairs, a man and his dog.
Mm-hmm.
I love that one. That's like my favorite poster of his. And then somebody commented about how they loved the movie, and he says, thank you. Yes, that was my favorite too. It had my real dog. So I guess that's Roosevelt was in that movie with him. I'm assuming it was Roosevelt. A lot of people are assuming it was Roosevelt, which seems like it would have been a recent movie because we know that dogs don't live forever. And, Roosevelt, he may be an older dog, but I mean, still, it's got to be within maybe a 10-year timeline, which makes sense because we know that he served in Anchorage. Anchorage was 2066 to 2077, and he had to have time to have been home, made a name for himself in the movie industry. So it was probably fairly recent, but we know that was his favorite film. And we see a couple other posters in the house that are all big like that. And it makes sense for him to have that type of thing in his house, decorating. And, he's being very gracious. He's complimenting, he's thanking people as they compliment his home. And as he sees his wife across the room, she's talking to somebody. So he just continues to kind of mingle. And we overhear some Vault-Tec executives talking about the negotiations in Anchorage. And they're having a big impact on pre-sales. And another man says, well, we're going to have to get with, we're going to have to circle up with DC about that. So whatever they're going to have the government do to kind of waylay peace talks or whatever is kind of the impression that you get from this. And then the first guy kind of jokes and says, well, it's going to have to be soon before the quarterly projections come out. Because, of course, they're Vault-Tec and they're about making money and that's all they care about. They don't care about peace talks. They care about selling vaults and making money, which is brought up later in the movie. Because, like, I don't know, like maybe Cooper didn't catch it at this moment when he overhears it, or maybe he doesn't really overhear it. Maybe that was just for our benefit.
I don't think he did hear it because
he didn't react.
Yeah.
So that was probably more for our benefit than his. But then because basically what happens then is, Bud Askins says, oh, Coop, Bud Askins. And he's like, oh my God.
He's
and,
like, yep, screw that guy.
and he keeps going. Like, he's like, I'm not going to go talk to this guy. So then we cut to the pool where we see a man flirting with a couple waitresses. And they're like, oh, do the voice from the robot from the show. And then we hear Codsworth.
Yep.
And we're like, oh, cool. And then he tries to get the women to like hang out with him after the party. And they're like, yeah, fat chance. So I guess it's not that good of a trick that he can get ladies, but it was neat.
Poor guy.
So we find out that he's the guy that did the voice. And we find out later, he sold his voice rights to the studio to do the robot butler voice for some show they never mention.
And it wasn't even Robco at first.
But then the studio was bought by Robco.
Yeah.
So now his voice is in the robots that every housewife and pervert purchases, according to him.
That's great.
And Coop even asked him, he's like, well, do you know how much I got paid for that? And Coop says, 10 million. And he's like, 167 before tax. And then he says, well, you could have asked for more. He says, I did. They gave me one of those robots.
Yeah. And he's like, that was the worst mistake I'd ever made.
He's like, now I come home and I hear my own voice asking me if I'd like to sit down. Which has got to be a little strange.
Yeah. Very meta.
Well, that was a cute scene, but they go on to talk about, and Coop mentions, you're the only one of my friends that came to this party. And his name is Sebastian, his friend. And he says, well, the Hollywood crowd doesn't seem to want to hang out with the corporate bunch, the pocket protector crowd, or this spokesperson for the end of the world. He's kind of being real, stating it like it is.
Yeah.
And Coop says, well, you don't even know the half of it. I lost a movie over these ads. He said, I showed up to set. The actors wouldn't come out of their trailers and said it was because I'd sold out or whatever. And he meant, they talk about how, and there's another actress who actually was the one who had the problem with him selling out. He said, she's in more ads than a billboard or something. So obviously it's an excuse that people are using to distance themselves from the spokesperson for the end of the world. And he mentioned, so then Sebastian says, it's, this whole radicalization is sweeping through Hollywood. It's even affected your friend Charlie. And he says, Coop's like, Charlie? Because we served together. Because we watched people die together. Like, what's he doing? And Charlie is the guy that was in the film with him that we saw him, the Man from Dead Horse, the film that we see him shooting, episode 2? When we first,
I believe so, yeah.
When we first see him and he starts on his journey with Vault-Tec, that was the film that was who he was filming with, was Charlie. And Sebastian says, Hollywood is the past. Products are the future. You're a product. I'm a product. The end of the world is a product. And the people who embrace that are the people whose future is golden. And that's an interesting concept. But that's, And I guess that's why Sebastian doesn't have any problem hanging out with Cooper anymore, because he has embraced that.
Yeah, they've both done that.
That the old way is done and everything is going to be done in a different way now. And it's all about the consumerism and products, and it's not about your values anymore, I guess. So that's all going away. So now we see a shot of the ghoul laying on the floor at the Super Duper Mart post-party. And, of course, what do we hear? The Mr. Handy. Ready to serve in Sebastian's voice, which is...
Didn't it even say he was Bartholomew Codsworth?
Yeah, Bartholomew, yeah. Yeah, I couldn't remember the name.
Bartholomew Codsworth.
Ready to serve. That was so great. So then we get some men come in dressed as like sheriffs or something. They've got those like those khaki and brown uniforms on. And they come in and they're all surrounding him, and they tell him that destroying a legitimate business is illegal in these parts.
Legitimate business.
And of course, the ghoul being sarcastic smartass. Well, says who? Says the government. Well, this is interesting. Did we have a government? We didn't really know we had a government. So that's, news to him. But fun fact, the ghoul did nothing to destroy this business. That was Lucy.
No, but he's still kind of taking the fault.
Yeah, but he's not pointing that out. He's not like, well, that wasn't me. I just happened to, just reap the benefits and take the goods. He didn't say anything about it. He took it. So we go back to Vault 4 and we see a doctor is removing a rotten tooth.
Yeah, which we didn't know
arm.
that he got shot with a tooth at first.
No, we assumed he was shot with a bullet. So, the doc makes a comment like, oh, a rotten tooth. These people up there will just find new ways to keep killing each other. Because I guess if you're running out of bullets, which honestly, a rotten tooth is a heck of a lot worse than a bullet.
Yeah, a lot. You can get infected.
You're going to get
so much easier.
Sepsis, you're going to die.
Very gross.
It was really disgusting. So he's like, obviously you need antibiotics and you need to stay here and rest for a few days. And, Lucy's, Max is like, no, we've got to get out. We got to get going. And Lucy's like, no, they're right. We're safe here and you need to rest because you've been shot. And the woman with the long black hair, we never learned her name. I even checked Amazon and they don't have a name for her. They just list the name of the actress with no name.
Weird.
She doesn't have a name. I don't know why. Like, there's no name for this woman. But they do call her a name. You know what? Actually, Benjamin calls her a name, and I forgot what it was. Darn it.
Are you talking about Birdie?
Birdie. That sounds right.
Yeah.
Birdie. Okay. But I don't know why Amazon didn't credit her with a name. Because they credit everybody else, even people you don't even, they're not even on the screen for 2 minutes.
And she was a major part of the episode, too.
She was. I was like, how come I can't find her name? Okay. So they have a conversation. Well, she mentions the fact that we found Max's armor and we're having people bring it back. So yay, they don't have to go back and get his armor. They're bringing it to the vault. So Lucy thanks her and tells her, well, it's not ideal for us to say, but it sure feels good to be back in the vault. Because I don't know if you've been to the surface, but it is not good. And Birdie says, well, I was born on the surface.
Yeah.
Which shocks Lucy because, you're so normal. Yeah. And I guess clean, but, she is in a vault. So I guess she's had a shower since she's come down. But so the woman explains that her mother was a courier and they were near Philly, I think. And she said you could still feel the heat of the blast from Shady Sands when the bomb went off. And Lucy said, oh, you're from Shady Sands. And Birdie says, well, a lot of us are. We were taken in by the vault because we had nowhere to go. We lost our homes. And Lucy says, well, that's a really good thing, and they agree, they were very fortunate to find safety in Vault 4 when they needed it. And that, they were a very compassionate community. So they Lucy and Max are required to be kept in quarantine for a little bit longer to be safe. So the doctor and Bertie leave, leaving Max and Lucy alone, which is creepy at the moment. Max starts out by telling Lucy that she smells good.
Mm-hmm.
So Lucy says, "Do you want to have sex?"
Yeah, it was just like she just was like, "All right, let's get it on."
It's very bold.
Very
She's like,
quickly.
"We got nothing better to do. Let's just do this." Which there's windows everywhere, so apparently this girl is.
Yeah, you can see people walking around out there,
right?
like...
And it's like an observation room. People can observe. So okay. And then he's like, "Oh, you mean that thing?" And he goes, "It happens
really weird
to some guys, but not me." And all right, so I don't want to really go into a lot of graphic detail because it is pretty icky. But if you've seen the show, he likens
it grows and it explodes.
His moment to a pimple popping.
Yeah.
Which is like the worst analogy.
Worst, like the least romantic thing you could say in that moment.
And I'm like, were the writers just looking for the most disgusting thing they could come up with, or what? I get that this guy is super naive and nobody, like, he did not have sex ed, obviously.
You can't tell me that he's never had an erection at that point. Like,
well, he has, but he said when they make it move. So I'm assuming he doesn't make it move.
Well, and like,
he just lets it sit there.
You see a guy in the first episode jacking off in bed. Like, what? Like,
he said it happens to some guys, not me, because I guess like he feels shame about it, so he doesn't want anybody to know. That
it just,
you know, so it's
very
icky.
Unrealistic in my opinion,
it is.
In my mind, but still,
and so
I mean, to each
he goes through this big explanation, and then she says, "Oh, well, ideally that should happen always." Yeah.
It's supposed to do that.
Yeah. And it should always happen. And he's like, well, and then instead of saying this at the beginning, he says it now. And I'm like, you could have just said this at the beginning and we could have like avoided this whole conversation. He says, well, I'm a knight of the Brotherhood of Steel and we can't.
Which, and she's like, again, that's
okie dokie.
But whatever.
Like, she's fine with that.
And she just lays it back and she's like, yeah, this ain't gonna happen.
And she's like, I mean, like, he just says, we're not supposed to. And she says, okie dokie, like, that would have been it. Like, that would have been fine. But no, he has to go through the whole icky thing. And so we see that they are in this room that's marked test subjects. So that's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So now they're out and they're having breakfast in the common area. And Max is looking suspiciously at everybody. And he's like, this doesn't feel right. There's something weird about this place.
Yeah, everybody's too happy.
He's like, everybody's too happy. It's like a cult. And, you know, and Lucy's like, oh, you're just not used to feeling safe. You're not used to being around people, you know. And he says, no, I feel like they're trying to trap us here. And she's like, but these people are just trying to take care of one another. And, you know, so he's trying to tell her, no, there's something wrong. She's trying to tell him, no, it's fine. And it's interesting how things flip shortly.
Mm-hmm.
They're talking, and the overseer comes over to say hi. Overseer Benjamin comes with Bertie. Bertie steps aside, and we see that Overseer Benjamin only has one eye.
Yep.
Right in the middle of his forehead.
Nobody is... You know, nobody acts like that's unusual, and nobody you find out why.
And the funny thing is, Lucy appears to be more disturbed by it than Maximus is. Like, Maximus is like, okay, dude's got one eye. Lucy's like, oh my God, I'm trying
not to stare. When she even asks him about it later, like, isn't that weird? Like, he's like, well, lots of people only have one eye. And
she asked Max about it, yeah.
His was big and in the center. Yeah, sorry, Max.
Oh, yeah, that was funny, because she's like, wasn't that a little strange? Well, he thought... He's like, right? I'm telling you, these people are too nice. And she's like, no, the eye in the center. He goes, well, it's a little to the left, which I thought was funny.
But
no, it's a little to the left.
The conversation, like Benjamin's just like, yeah, stay out of level 12.
Yeah, he comes over to read up a list of inane rules. One of them including
the foosball table, and if there's no pencil, please come to me because I have plenty.
Right. And then if they tell you there's no pencils.
Apparently, a lot of people don't know how to use the bathroom properly because
the newcomers. Right.
Please ask. That's a lot less awkward than
not doing it right.
And doing, yeah.
Apparently they have issues with how the toilets work. Because I'm sure like there's some kind of waste management system, and it's like if you've ever gone to the bathroom on a boat or anything like
Yeah.
that, where it's like you can't just flush, you got to like do things to, yeah. So,
Well, I mean, and a lot of these people came from Shady Sands. So you have to wonder, like, I mean,
oh,
it's
they're
one of the
probably just
first,
peeing in the bushes. So
yeah, maybe, and
I don't
using
know.
whatever
Shady
they
Sands
find to
had
wipe.
amenities, so maybe they had working toilets. You never know. But
Maybe.
yeah, but the thing is, like, he gives them these inane rules about the foosball table and the toilet and get pencils from me. Oh, and don't go
Yeah,
to level 12.
yeah.
You probably
Is
didn't have to bring that up, because if you didn't bring that up, then nobody would have been like, what's on
Yeah,
level
it's like one of
12?
those things like, okay, well, now that you've mentioned it,
Right.
I do have
Now
the
you've
idea.
planted the seed and I want to know what's on level 12. So, you know, and as Lucy and Max are having this conversation about how weird it is that he only has one eye, other people are walking around. She's noticing like the guy with the
Yeah.
nose on his forehead
Yep.
and the guy with the like flipper hand and this other woman with glowing eyes. And she's
hmm
like, okay,
Which I
there
was
is
kind of
something
curious
weird
about
here.
what those would be like having glowing eyes. Like, what did they do for her?
I know. I don't know. Maybe she's got some kind of special vision or something. I don't
Yeah.
know. But it was interesting how, like, I get like how people's appendages got put in different places due to the types of experiments they were doing. But glowing eyes,
Yeah, we didn't know about the experiments at this point, but
not yet,
we
not
all
to
know
this
that
episode, I
something
think.
happened.
Yeah.
And it was only certain people. Not everybody was like that. Like Birdie wasn't
Yeah, because she was
mutated.
from the surface. So, like,
So,
weirdly, in
yeah.
Vault 4, the normies are all not vault dwellers, whereas she thought normies were vault dwellers. you
Right.
know? So, because she was shocked that Birdie was normal, but she was a surface dweller.
hmm
When, as it turns out in Vault 4, if you're normal, you probably came from Shady Sands.
Yep.
So now we see the ghoul, and he's been taken prisoner, and they're traipsing through the desert, and he's flashing back to probably maybe not a happier time, but definitely a better time. And he and Barb are sitting in a hot tub, and he's asking her about work. Have you ever thought about leaving and doing something else? She's like, well, no. And he says, well, I think about quitting showbiz and buying a ranch in Bakersfield and going back to being a real cowboy. And she says, well, what would I do? And he says, well, you'd look pretty and you'd help me raise chickens. And she just laughs and she's like, no. I mean, she doesn't seem very impressed by that, because
No.
I get the impression like he probably grew up as a cowboy, because obviously those skills didn't come from just being in the movies.
Right.
He was probably a cowboy rancher, whatever, before the war. And maybe he met her, I don't know, at some point in time, but she seems like a total city girl, and so she's like, ha, I'm not going to go live on a ranch. No. And so she gets out of the hot tub. She's like, what has gotten into you? And he's like, well, you know, what was it? Gin, whatever they were drinking. And he says, but I've probably been reading too much news lately and second guessing city life. He says, and then, she's toweling off and she's putting on a pit boy and he's giving her this look and she notices it and she's like, you've seen these before. He says, but not on you. And for some reason, that bothers him.
Yeah.
And so she starts to justify it. She's like, well, Bud licensed them from Robco, and we're using them to integrate the Vault-Tec emission systems. And, Coops is like, oh, butt askets, because
Right.
he didn't get a good impression of the guy. And she says, I know the company is filled with guys like him, but it doesn't, Vault-Tec will exist with or without me, and it doesn't do any good to complain about it from the sidelines. So she looks at it like this company needs her, I guess, or that she needs to be involved with it or something. And he's like, you have one life. Why do you want to spend your 9 to 5 with assholes like this? And she says, I need this job so we can get a spot in the vault. And he says, we got money.
Right.
We'll buy a spot in the vault. And she says, a good
Doesn't
spot.
look like that.
And
he's
he's
like, well, what does that mean?
Yeah. And she just deflects it. Like, she doesn't want to say. She knows what that means, but she doesn't want to say, and she doesn't want the conversation to go any farther. So she just says, I'm doing what I can. Just trust me, please. And every time I've always heard, if somebody says, just trust me or whatever, then you know you can't.
Right. It's like, well, why don't you trust me?
Well, I mean, that's the thing. And if they had, and that's the thing, and that's why you wonder, like, is their marriage like a real marriage, or is it like she's a plant? So is she, I mean, and maybe they have maybe it was a real marriage, but like maybe she's not as committed as he is. You know, I don't know. Cause like Vault-Tec, we know Vault-Tec brainwashing. Maybe they've got her brainwashed, and maybe they've got her, I don't know. Cause he seems like the all-American, you know, guy, but you know, he, you know, you kind of get the idea that he's starting to get some doubts about some things. He definitely has his own mind. I don't think he's the brainwashing type. And he might be a problem when it comes to the whole Vault-Tec buy-in brainwash. But the only thing that they have is that he loves her intensely, and she can manipulate him. So she's trying desperately to manipulate him without spilling the beans. So it's the just trust me, I'm doing what I can. She doesn't want to tell him what a good vault means.
Right.
We know, but, and obviously she knows, because she doesn't want to go into an experimental vault. And as an aside, if they moved to Bakersfield, if they bought a spot in the vault in Bakersfield, they would be ghouls. Which may be what happened to him.
We do know that, yeah.
Because Vault 12,
that's Vault 12, yep,
in Bakersfield is the one where the door was designed to purposefully not close. And all the residents became ghouls because they were all exposed to radiation. And that's what, Necropolis? Is that where that was formed?
Yep. That they become the inhabitants of Necropolis.
Right. So
set in the rest of
we kind of talked about that when Lucy asks him, is this what happened to you, radiation? And he said something like that. And I'm wondering if, because we know events later on, if he got himself a spot in the vault in Bakersfield, because maybe he went ahead and got his ranch in Bakersfield later on, because we know they divorced at some point. So maybe he moves to Bakersfield and gets out of showbiz. Maybe he tries to get out of this whole thing, because we know that he's not Vault-Tec's spokesperson there at the end. And maybe he ends up in Vault 12 because he's not going to be in the good vault with his wife because they're divorced. And I'm assuming they're not going to let him in.
Find out exactly
not yet
how he turned. So that, I mean, that's a good point. Maybe he did make it to Vault 12.
I mean, it seems like she said it was a 2-hour drive, and I don't know how long these vaults are open once the bombs hit, because we know he was in the Hollywood Hills when the bombs hit. We know that. He was doing a birthday party, but he was also with his daughter. And apparently he does not know where she is now. So,
yeah, we still don't have an answer for that.
So let's break here. This is like a good spot. It's not quite halfway through the episode, but I felt like there was a lot in the beginning, and like the second half went a little quicker, I guess. I think it was like there was one there, it just went a little racier. So we'll pause here for a break, and we'll be right back.
Hi, welcome to 3 Count Thoughts. Let me introduce the crew real quick.
Hi, I'm Maverick Stone.
I'm Romer.
And I'm Jaxus. Join us as we talk all things wrestling. Each week, we'll take a topic from the wrestling world, knock it around a bit, and then go over the week in wrestling from a strictly fan perspective. We can be found on all major podcast catchers. We can also be found at 3 Count Thoughts on both YouTube and Twitter. Or you can send us an email using 3countthoughts@gmail.com. Okay, are you ready?
Ring the bell.
Okay. Hope you enjoyed the lovely. Sorry, dog. Something got her attention, I guess. All right. So we're back to, we go back to Cooper, and he's sitting in a bar, and he's waiting on his pal, Charlie, to come.
Charlie, yeah.
And he's watching the news, and we hear a report about how nations are racing to secure uranium to control the future of energy, and that the shortage has turned allies into enemies. So, we hear people talking about peace negotiations and about possible ending the war in Anchorage, and how the Reds are losing their foothold and everything. But then we're hearing about how the shortage of uranium is going to be causing issues. So, what's going to happen with this? Is this going to cause a separate war? Like, what's the story? And so, we just hear the snippet that just is enough to make you think, this is state of the world that they're living in. And Charlie comes in, and Coop, I guess he just can't hold back because he's really upset to learn that, Charlie is attending these communist meetings and things. And he says, what? You missed my party. You couldn't bother to come. What, you had one of your meetings with, your communist meetings? He goes, what the heck, man? We fought against all that crap. We watched people die up north. What are you doing all this for? And Charlie's like, well, what did we do that for? Why did we do that? What, for the American dream? And they start, and they're talking, and Charlie says, Vault-Tec is the devil. And Cooper says, what, are you saying my wife is the devil? And he says, no, I like Barb. He says, but do you know what fiduciary responsibility is? And Cooper says, I play a cowboy for a living. No, I don't know what fiduciary responsibility is. And so Charlie explains, the government has outsourced the survival of the human race to Vault-Tec. And Vault-Tec is a private company. It's a private corporation, and they have fiduciary responsibility to their shareholders to make money. How do they make money? They sell vaults. And you can't sell vaults if peace negotiations go through, because if there's no threat of war, you're not going to need to sell a vault. Don't sell a vault, you don't make money. So he's making some sense here, right? And
he's done a lot of research on this.
And of course, this is capitalism, right? Supply and demand and yada, yada, yada. I mean, this is all like basis of capitalism. So what Vault-Tec is doing, is not communist per se. So it doesn't seem like, maybe Charlie is kind of going against the capitalism. I don't know. So Vault-Tec has a fiduciary responsibility to make sure that the peace treaties don't go through. And Cooper says, well, how are they going to do that? And Charlie says, well, I don't know. But do you remember the movie that we did with Johnny Morton? And Cooper says, remember the movie that we did with Johnny Morton? You were the sheriff and I was a generic Indian. And of course, here's Cooper, sweetheart that he was. He goes, you were not a generic Indian. He says, Tall Hand could talk to horses and you played him with dignity and grace. It was a great role for you. Which, he's mad at his friend, but he's still like defending his friend. I thought it was really great. Right. So Charlie goes on. He says, Morton played a rancher who owned half of Missouri. What happens when the ranchers have more power than the sheriff? And Cooper says the whole town burns down. He says the whole town burns down. Vault-Tec owns half of everything. And the government is broke as a joke. He said, and Coop says, no, you're part of some cult. This is some kind of conspiracy. No, I don't want to believe any of this. And Charlie says, well, you're defending a system that's ready to burn down the world. Who's part of a cult? So they both make sense, right? They both make a lot of sense. And it's hard to say like who's right in this situation because you don't want to believe what Charlie's saying because it's too evil. Right. But he did say that Vault-Tec was the devil. And he's making some good points to back up his statement.
Yeah, he's done a lot of extensive research on this, and
it makes sense considering the fact that, like he said, they have a fiduciary responsibility to their shareholders to make money, and you can't make money in this situation if there is no war. So, therefore, and we already heard it at the party, we have to make sure that the peace negotiations don't go through. We got to get DC involved before the fiscal projections go out. Or the quarterly projections, whatever. We have to make sure that happens before the projections go out, because you don't want the shareholders to see that we're having an issue, that the pre-sales are down because of the peace negotiations, the peace talks. We don't want the shareholders to see that we're losing money, right? This is what's happening. It's all tying together. But this is why I think that conversation that we heard at the party was for our benefit and not Cooper's. Like, I don't think he heard it. Because this isn't clicking to him, but it's clicking to us. So Charlie says, come to a meeting, learn the truth about the company that your wife works for her sake. And he leaves Cooper a card and he leaves the room. And so Cooper's like, I need another drink. Because this is blowing his mind, right? Because I think deep inside it's making sense, but he doesn't want to believe it. And, and maybe somewhere inside, it's like niggling to him about Barb's behavior.
Yeah, because he's like, with what she's told me already about what they're like good vault?
Right. The whole good vault, management vault, other vault. How she's so adamant about,
and she clearly knows something's up.
Yeah. And I mean, and maybe like puzzle pieces are, like, maybe they're starting to click in his brain, but they're not at the realization part of your brain yet.
Yeah,
because subconscious is maybe working things out.
And...
So it is very interesting how all this is coming together. So now we're back at Cooper's house. Phone rings, he answers it, and we hear Henry. Hey, is Barb there? Oh, is this Mr. Cooper Howard? Oh, wow, blah, blah, blah. And Coop's already like, no, we don't take calls this in the evening, blah, blah, blah. So he's off. He's just like, I don't want to deal with this. And he goes to the table and he says, so you have a new personal assistant? And Barb's like, oh, yeah. Because apparently she's getting important now. She's probably been promoted. She's so great. She now is personal assistant. But she never tells him anything about work. Like, she didn't come home and be like, oh, honey, I got a new office. I have a new personal assistant. I have this. Like, he knows nothing about her job.
Right.
She doesn't talk about it. Apparently, they don't talk about much. I mean, like, what do they talk about?
Because that would be a huge part of what a lot of normal conversations would be, right? How does work?
You would think.
What'd you do?
I mean, considering he's got a big career, she's got a big career, they don't talk about it, apparently. And so they're sitting down to the dinner table, and he just casually, well, is Janie asleep? No, she's reading Little House on the Prairie to Roosevelt upstairs. And he says, well, is he enjoying that? And I feel like he's trying to make conversation because she's not really sharing much, and he realizes that she doesn't share. And she doesn't answer, and it's awkward. And he's like, what? And she says, well, it's just going to be really hard for her when we go in the vault. And he's like, what's going to be hard for her? And she says, no dogs in the vault. And of course, this hits him.
It wasn't an if, it was a when.
Yeah. And this hits him too. He's like, what do you mean no dogs in the vault? And she says, no dogs in the vault. I mean, it's policy. Dogs are meat eaters, and they're just very inefficient to have dogs in the vault. And we all know that Cooper loves his dog. He made a movie with his dog, and of course, she says, oh, it's going to be hard on Janie. It's going to be hard on Coop. Leave his dog.
Clearly, because he was not happy.
He's not happy about it. So he asks her, he says, so who makes these decisions? And she's like, what? And, he says, no dogs in the vault.
Which is a pretty, I wouldn't mind knowing that myself. Like, right. if I was going to be going into a vault, like, who does make the ultimate decisions as to what the policies are?
Yeah. Like, does somebody just wake up one day and go, we're all going to wear red shoes, red clown shoes. That's what we're going to do. You know, is it just one person who's like, I got an idea and I think this is great, and everybody else just has to go with it? You know, because like he says, I mean, who decided on the blue jumpsuits? Can I wear a green jumpsuit? You know, what if I don't want to wear a blue jumpsuit? And she's like, you're going to worry about your wardrobe at the end of the world? And he's like, no, I'm worried about my freedom that I fought for.
Which is a legitimate concern.
It is. He's like, I don't want to be living underground under the boot of Bud Askins. And she's like, you know, and she, you know, she gets all bent out about it, and she pulls the ultimate feminine argument. Well, while you were at war fighting for your freedom, I was at home checking the mailbox, worrying every day, waiting for the phone to ring, waiting for the doorbell to ring, you know. So she's going on and on about how, well, you were fighting. I was here not knowing whether you were dead or alive. The ultimate woman argument. And he backs off. And she says, I go to work and I think of how humanity will be saved, how they will survive in a nuclear event, and that will wipe out 90% of the earth. And I come home and you talk about hiding away in Bakersfield. And I don't know what planet you're living on. She's like, I don't know what you think, but a 2-hour drive is not going to save us. It's not going to cut it if billions of people lose their lives. She's like,
well, the thing is, like, how's he supposed to know this unless she tells him?
She doesn't tell him anything. He's like, Bakersfield, you know, that's 2 hours away. We'll be fine. They're going to nuke Los Angeles. We're not going to be in LA. It'll be fine. You know, and that's a reasonable assumption. But she knows better. She actually knows who's getting bombed, probably. And, you know, she talks about how, like, if billions of people are going to lose their lives, she's going to do what she can to make sure the people that she loves, and that's Janie and that's him, that they are going to be in the best vault, the vault for management that will oversee all the vaults. That's why I don't think it does click for him a
little bit, though, after that, because he's like, oh, shit. Okay.
Yeah, so after she does her female tirade and he's like, okay, you know, he chills and she does her little stomp from the table and he grabs her and he hugs her and he says, I know you always do what you feel is right. That's what I love about you. And it's over, right? Like, he acquiesces again. She managed him. She manipulated him with her, you know, and that's like the most emotion we see from this woman, like, ever, I think.
Yeah.
It is the most emotion we've ever seen from her. And honestly, I think I was more emotional than she was. So, but she never says that she loves him. I don't think he just says, that's what I love about you.
I don't think you ever hear her say that.
I don't think so. But, you know, we know that he's not going to ask about the dogs in the vault anymore. Like, he's not going to, he's done with, he's not going to pick on about it. He's like going to let it go. He's going to let it drop. We think, you know, like he's done with it. He's not going to bother her. So we go back to Vault 4 and Overseer Benjamin and Lucy are sitting in his office and they're chatting and he's going over the toilet rules with her and like how to operate the toilet. She's like, yeah, I got it. She's like, I'm from the Vault too. And he's like, you are? Oh, wow. That's, you know, you usually don't meet a fellow what did he call it? Like natural vaulter or something like that?
Something like a vaultier, yeah. Cause...
And she's like, oh, you were born in the vault? And he's like, yeah, 5th generation. And she's like, I didn't realize because of and he's like, what? And she's like, because so many people here from the surface.
Right. Well, I think this
not
is when
because you have a big eye in the middle of your forehead.
Figures out that the mutated people are from the.
Yeah, that's when she's starting to realize that this is not what she normally would imagine. But you know, he talks about, oh yeah, because we have to let all them in. Listen, they don't like it when you call them surfies, and you know, and if you make a little joke about it, it just bombs. You know.
And she's like, well, what's the joke? And it was, it's something about
I don't remember, but it was but it was a big bomb.
Yeah. I don't remember what it was, but it was a big bomb. And he's like, she doesn't get it.
And she's like,
no, we get it. It was just
like, oh, she doesn't get it.
And very inappropriate.
You're like, oh my gosh. But when she tells him that she's from Vault, he looks at records supposedly, and he's like, "Oh, I see here, Goosey McLean." She's like, "No, my name is Lucy." So he puts glasses on, which is hilarious because you would think that the nose piece would cover his eye, right?
Yeah.
And he goes, "Nope, says right here, Goosey." So that's interesting. Are we going to find out that her name really is Goosey and that she's just been called Lucy?
Yeah, it was always a nickname, I thought, but apparently they put that down
her real
as her
name?
official name. Yeah.
Lucy is her nickname. So she talks about how, like, well, I think it's really nice that you guys let the people from Shady Sands come into your vault. And he's like, yeah. I mean, it's
he didn't
like,
seem too happy.
If you're gonna, you have to let people in and you have to accept their ways and adopt their weird ways of eating or whatever, all this stuff, if you want to get elected. And she's like, oh, well, but I think it's nice. And he goes, well, you guys do the same thing, right? And she's like, no, we don't let anybody in. He goes, oh, well, that must be nice. And she's like,
yeah,
no, I think it's really nice that you let them in. I mean, they had nowhere to go. And he finds it odd that, Vault 33 doesn't let anybody in, but it's always been a policy of Vault 4 to let surface dwellers in.
Yeah, I don't know of any other vault that opens up
lets
and
people
lets
in.
people in. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know either. Because most of them are all about not
protecting
letting people in and not letting people out, or everybody's already gotten out and nobody wants back in,
Right. And then
or
it gets inhabited
as
by
Maximus
other people.
says, they're all full of monsters.
Yeah.
Nobody wants in. So they're, Lucy gets brave and she says, so tell me what's on Vault 12 or level 12. Tell me what's on level 12. And he's like, that's it. You need to go. Goodbye, Goosey. And that's, I mean, even further, I think would pique my curiosity and be like, well, I got to check this out. But we don't know. So now we go back and Maximus is also wandering around the vault and he finds his armor and it's in storage. And he sees a janitor and he says, hey, where do you get your power from? And of course, apparently the guy shows him because now we see Maximus in the reactor room and he's looking at the fusion core and Birdie finds him.
Yeah, and there's a bunch of glowing blue conduits, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah, because, I mean, it looked like a typical reactor room that we see in most vaults where instantly if you go in there, you usually get some kind of radiation.
That and maybe
I guess he doesn't have a Pip-Boy, so we don't know
whether...
Yeah. So Birdie finds him and she says, well, how are you adjusting? And he goes, well, does it matter? I mean, I'm leaving soon, right?
Right.
And she says, well, I know it's hard for people to feel safe when they've never had safety in their lives. And it's also hard for people to trust when they have a guilty conscience. Now, she pegs him. But I don't think she knows what his guilty conscience stems from. Obviously, we know because he lies to everybody about who he is. Maybe she knows that because they brought the power armor back, and maybe she knows that somehow knows that it's not his. I don't know. It's hard to say, but she just kind of throws that out there. And of course, we know he does have a guilty conscience, so that's starting to work on him. I think that's part of her manipulation is like finding people's weak spots, and so she says, "Tell you what. Here's your own room. Why don't you go sleep in your own bed, have a hot shower?" And he's like, you said hot shower?
What does that mean?
Like, what is that? So he's intrigued. So then we see him walking down, what did they call it? Sycamore Street?
Something like it, yeah.
When he was doing the commercial.
I didn't know they actually had names for hallways.
So he's walking down, I'm just going to say Sycamore Street because that's what, in the ad, that's what it was. And he goes into he finds his room and he goes in and he finds a gift basket of different foods and he hears, Give Me the Simple Life playing on the record player. And he loves it. It has running water and soap and he takes a shower and he has a fluffy robe and slippers and caviar, which he had to go out in the hall and ask somebody, what is this? What is this? But he's obviously starting to enjoy himself and he's starting to understand that, this is kind of nice. So he goes back into, so he's enjoying everything. And then we we see Lucy and she finds the classroom. Well, we know that Lucy is a history teacher. So she finds the classroom and she goes inside. And I guess she's feeling maybe a little nostalgic, but she notices a timeline on the chalkboard. And it's the timeline of Shady Sands and like when it was founded and it goes through, and I should have written the years down, but I didn't. But it goes over like when Shady Sands was founded, when the NCR became a thing, when it became the capital, blah, blah, blah. And then it shows
kind of like the whole history of the NCR.
It shows the fall of Shady Sands, or the decline. I forget which. Like the fall of Shady Sands is 2277. So 200 years after the bombs fell. And the way they depicted it, it was fall of Shady Sands, 2277, and then an arrow, and then the picture of a nuclear bomb.
Yeah, which I thought was interesting too. I didn't even really think about that. I thought that the nuclear explosion was part of the fall of Shady Sands, but maybe it wasn't. I've had people suggest
it wasn't. So everybody threw a fit, and they had a cow because they were like, "Oh my gosh, you just killed the timeline because
you retconned the NC,
and you just blew everything." Vegas. Todd Howard literally had to like do a thing where he was like, "No, we didn't kill the timeline because these events occurred concurrently." He's like, New Vegas did occur in 2081. What they're saying is the decline of Shady Sands, the fall began in 2077 and continued until unknown year bomb, right? They didn't really state what the bomb was, but it was after the events of New Vegas in 2081. So New Vegas, then bomb Shady Sands. So sometime after New Vegas was when Shady Sands was bombed. I don't know if we know the exact year on that. I don't know if he has since stated, but it was not written on the blackboard. It was just decline of Shady Sands 2077, arrow over nuclear bomb, would have been sometime after 2081, which was New Vegas. So timeline is not disrupted to all the people that lost their ever-loving minds over it.
2281.
Or yeah, 2281. My bad. I'm losing 200 years there. 2281, New Vegas.
All right.
Yeah. Slip of my 200 years there. So the timeline was preserved according to God Howard. He said it himself.
Well, and I've watched videos with Tim Kaine talking about the same thing. He's like, guess what? Sometimes characters get times wrong, or they
right. He's like, sometimes there's time slippage, or sometimes
they could lie.
You know, and let me just say, I don't know if we've said it before, Tim Kaine liked the Fallout TV show.
Oh, yes.
He liked it. So all y'all that are like, he liked it. He made a video about it. Look it up.
He's like, guess what? I've got
see it on his YouTube channel.
Wrong.
He liked it. Oh, yeah, he even said. But I know, and I forget the guy's name, and I'm sorry I forget the guy's name, but he's like the lore person at Bethesda, and he was like, yeah, I would. He goes, I run up and down the halls all the time, and I'm like, stop this, stop, no, here, this, and he was very involved. So timeline maintained.
Right.
So Lucy's poking around, so she sees this, and this blows her mind because she, this tells her that 200 years of history that she wanted from Maximus that he didn't really know or whatever. And she sees a flag in the corner. Well, it's not like the flag in her corner of her classroom. So she opens it up to see, and it's an NCR flag. And we hear the swelling of the Fallout theme, which incidentally, they only used twice in this whole season. We don't hear the Fallout theme very often in the Fallout show, but this is one time, and it's very appropriate. I thought it was very, very on point at this moment to play the Fallout theme when she, unfurls the flag. I loved it. It was chills. It was great. So then she hears a commotion in the hallway. She goes out. There's people brushing somewhere. And she's like, what's going on? And a man says, oh, the surface dwellers have this tradition. It's a little too much for me. And, so, he walks off, and some other lady goes, come with us. And she's like, okay. So she's going off with them to this tradition that they have going on. So we go back to the ghoul and the deputies. They are now entering a building, and they meet a man, and the ghoul recognizes this man, and they're like, oh my gosh, oh, it's you. Oh, wow, it's you. Like, oh, wow. And the man's name is Sorrel Booker, and he's like, well, I heard it was a ghoul that busted up the Super Duper Mart, but I didn't know it was the ghoul. And then he starts to tell his sheriffs, like, do you know who this guy is? This guy was the best bounty hunter in the day. Like,
Right.
he's bragging about him. And and then the ghoul's like, oh, Sorrel Booker. Oh, okay. So he sits down across the table from him. He says, can I get a needle and thread? And they're all like, what? And they're like, I don't know if we got one. He's like, I've got one in my backpack. Can I get one out? So he starts to sew Lucy's finger onto his hand.
Yeah, I thought that. I was like, wait a minute, is that a thing? Like, okay.
Apparently. So he just sews it right back on.
The fact that he has this in his bag makes you wonder how many times this has happened.
Well, as a ghoul, things might fall off in inconvenient times. So sure. And, you're also wearing probably some old clothing if something gets ripped. It's just good to have a little sewing kit on you. You got to make some little repairs now and then. Maybe he was a Boy Scout as a child. Or a Pioneer Scout as a child. He probably learned to be prepared. So that was pretty funny. So he's sewing his finger on and they're talking. And Booker's like, I don't know what keeps you going 200 years. Is it that California sunshine you like feeling on your wrinkly face, or are you still looking for her?
Yeah, and that got his attention.
That hit. That hit a spot right there. The ghoul says, well, I'll tell you for sure, it is not so I can sit here and have unintelligent conversations with dipshits like yourself. Which earns him a smack on the head from the sheriff who says, you watch who you're talking to. That's the president right there. And he says, well, that's the first I've heard. Maybe you should hire yourself a PR firm. He says, because I have not heard anything about this. All I'm hearing is about some woman named Moldaver.
Right.
So then they're talking about, yeah, she's pretty scary. They call her the Flame Mother. And, but then they go back to talking about the super duper mine. They said, well, that was under our protection and we can't let that go. We can't let you get away with that. So if we do, people are going to be upset that we didn't punish the perpetrator and there's going to be anarchy. So the ghoul says, well, I guess I'm guilty. If you need more evidence, I'll tell you about a town I shot up called Philly.
Right.
The sheriff says, well, my daddy lives in Philly. And the ghoul says, well, not no more. Not unless he's a coward.
Which really pisses him off more. He's
pisses
really
off the sheriff. Yeah. And he says, and Booker says, don't take the bait. And Cooper says, well, I'm not here to fish. He goes, I'm just here to see if the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. He says, and the deputy or the sheriff, whatever, says, well, my daddy was no coward. And he says, well, in that case, are you? Yeah. So Booker, this guy is about ready to shoot him. And Booker says, take his gun away. And the ghoul's like, oh, well, that's mighty kind of you. And he says, take him out back and feed him to the pigs, which we don't know if the pigs are one-headed or two-headed. We don't know.
Yeah, I've never seen one in a game.
Didn't get to see him. So, of course, the deputies or the sheriffs, whatever, they go to get him up, and both of them end up getting themselves dead. It was a pretty thrilling scene. And, of course, Booker's sitting there, oh, my God, can't get good help these days, I guess, right? And the ghoul notices a bunch of wanted signs on the wall, and he notices one in particular, and he grabs it down, and he goes, why do you have a picture of this woman on your wall? And Booker says, well, that's Moldaver. And Cooper says, well, that's not how I remember her. And Cooper says,
what?
Yeah. And Booker says, well, how do you remember her? And of course, we're back in the Hollywood Hills and we see Cooper pulling up to the outside of the Hollywood Forever Cemetery.
Which, that was a great inclusion.
Yeah, she has her meetings at the chapel at the cemetery, which... whatever, So this scene is interesting because we go back and forth. So we see Cooper going into this meeting that he is going to check out that Charlie gave him the card for. Simultaneously, we see Lucy going into the atrium with the other dwellers gathering, and it's some sort of ceremony. There's candles, and then we go back to Cooper, and he's heading up the steps into the building. And then we're back to Lucy, and they're making these shish, shish, shish noises, and they're raising their arms and they're lowering their arms and they're making these weird gestures. And we're back to Coop, and he sees people gathering outside of a room down the hall, and he's still debating on whether he's actually going to do this. And now we're back to Lucy, and people start unzipping their tops and taking
I don't know,
their tops
like,
off.
I
And
must have
she's
only
like,
been half paid attention to this part, because how did I miss this?
oh, you missed it? Like all these vault
Yeah, I
dwellers, like
don't know what I
unzip
was.
their
I think I
tops,
was at
and they
work at the
take off
time.
their vault tops,
Yeah,
and
they're all
she
getting
starts to,
naked.
and then she's
Like,
like, "No, I'm not gonna do this." And she starts to feel a little weird at this point. She's like, "Why am
yeah,
I here
because they
again?"
start spread like,
And it gets better. So she's looking
yeah,
around, and she's like, "I'm not taking my top off." So now we're back to Cooper. Charlie meets him in the hall, and he says, "Thanks for coming." And Coop says, "Well, we'll see if I stay." And Charlie says,
yeah,
"Oh, you'll stay." I mean, he's confident. Now we go back to Lucy, and we're now chanting, "Flame
flame
Mother, we
mother, flame.
remember. Bring back the last as we remember." I think I wrote this down right. "We bring back Shady Sands as we remember. We bring back those taken from by covering ourselves with their ashes. To bring back Shady Sands, blood must spill."
Mm-hmm.
So we see Lucy, she actually does put a little bit of the ash on her forehead
And
because
that's
she
when
doesn't
she
know what
hears
it is. They're
that,
just
and she's like,
passing it
"Oh,
around. She puts it on and realizes they're like the ashes of
of the
of who
people
we
who
remember.
died at Shady
And
Sands."
she's
Yeah,
like, "Oh." And so she kind of stops, and they're talking about blood spilling. We go
and people are
back to
drinking
Charlie,
it.
and Charlie says, "Hey, I want to introduce you to somebody." We go back to the dwellers. They're drinking something out of a pot, but they're talking about blood of
Yeah,
the
it's
people
red.
they remember. I mean, are they actually drinking blood, or is it symbolic, like in the
Yeah,
Catholics drinking the
it,
blood of Christ, but we're drinking wine? I don't know. It
it
looked convincing.
was
And of course, they're
really
like
red.
drinking it from a ladle. So it's like spilling down their fronts, and it's really
Hmm.
gross because, like they said, cover ourselves in the blood, whatever. Then we go back to Cooper, and he meets Miss Johnson, but it's Moldaver
Yeah,
back in the day, 200 years ago.
shorter hair,
And she's like,
glasses.
"Oh, hi, Mr. Howard. I'm a big fan." Then we cut back to the atrium, and we reveal a big poster or
Yeah, it's a
something
painting.
of
Yeah,
the Flame Mother. And it's her. It's
yep.
Moldaver. And Lucy recognizes her because she knows the
He
woman
steals
from the vault.
dads.
Yeah, the woman who steals dads, exactly. So she recognizes this woman too. So it's a really wild scene where it's back and forth and back and forth. And a lot of times the dialogue is cutting over each scene. Like you'll hear the chanting in the background when you see Cooper walking around the building. It's wild. It's really cool scene. And so next, we see Lucy running down the hall, and she gets to Max's room, and she's banging on the door. Now, how she knew where Max was, I'm not sure.
Yeah, because he didn't even have that room until
Right,
he got the
because
Pip-Boy.
when did they see each other between the time that he got the whatever suspension of belief? She's
The
banging
last
on his
time,
door, and she
yeah.
says, "We need to talk." And he's smiling like everybody else in the vault, you know?
Well, he just mentioned that he'd just eaten oysters, which is
Right.
an aphrodisiac.
He meets her in his fluffy robe, and she's like, "You were right." And he says, "No, you were right." And, and she says, "You want to try these oysters? They make you feel so good. Want to make my cock explode now?" And she's,
Yeah,
"No,
I'm like, dude,
no,
come
we
on.
need to leave right now." She goes, "These people are insane." And he goes, "Well, yeah, they're like you." He says, "They're weird, but nice." She says, "No." She goes, "Okay, I understand why you think it's safe here and it's nice after everything that you've seen above and everything that you've been through, but these people are hiding something, and I'll prove it to you." So she says, "I am not leaving without you." And she leaves. And she is going to vault level 12.
Hmm.
And now we're on level 12, and it's dark and it's creepy, and it seems like it's abandoned, but she keeps going, and she finds like science equipment and lab stuff and body parts in jars. She finds
You see the gulper, her another gulper, when she like right after she walked in, which apparently she missed because I would have, if it were me, I would have walked over
yeah.
and
I
looked
think I
at it.
missed it too. I just remember seeing like parts in jars. I don't remember seeing an entire thing.
Yeah,
But she
it,
she switches on a holotape, which I don't know if I would have just like randomly turned on TV in a creepy place, like because sounds at that point, but she turns on a holotape and she watches a woman giving birth in water
mhm.
to fish-like creatures that then proceed to eat her. And then, I mean, that grosses her out. She turns it off, but she keeps going. God bless her. She's got some bravery. She keeps going. And then she finds these like cryopod type things. And I don't know that they're frozen or they're just suspended. I don't know. She finds these pods and there's more women in these pods. And we see somebody come in the room behind her. Now they don't see her and she doesn't know that they're coming, but then the lights flick on and so she ducks. And it's the doctor. It was the doctor that took the tooth out of Maximus's arm. And he starts talking to the women and he's like, okay, I just wanted to make sure everybody was okay. Nobody got out because the door was left open and I was concerned.
I think he got an alert. Yeah.
He hears like Lucy's trying to hide herself better and she shuffles and makes a noise and he hears it. So he hits an alarm and he breaks something on the wall. He grabs a weapon and he goes after her and they fight and she throws acid in his face.
Yep.
To kind of try and get away, but it's too late because by then the vault guards have come and they're dragging her off and she's screaming about how you're all crazy. Your culture is insane. And of course, Birdie, how she's everywhere at all the time.
Yeah, because she was
know.
the one who was leading the rave too.
Yeah, I mean, she's always everywhere. But she pops out of nowhere and says, well, I'm sure if we came into your home, we could say the same thing. Because she's under the impression that every vault has experiments.
Mm-hmm.
We'll learn later, but she's basically like, well, we're no different than you, and we would call you crazy too. So they're dragging Lucy off to somewhere, and we get an ending shot of Maximus sitting in his fluffy robe, eating popcorn, watching TV, having a ball, and we're hearing I'm Tickled Pink by Jack Shamden. Yeah. It was so good. He's just smiling away, just like those crazy vault dwellers that we're in a cult. They're just smiling. It's weird. Oh, he's doing it now. And he's rather enjoying his little vault slice of life. And then we see the pullout. The pullout shows a radio station, which is obviously our preview for next episode. Yeah. So this had, like I was talking to Eric over break, this one was a very foreboding episode. Had a lot of foreshadowing, had a lot of it was a lot of setup for things that happen in the future. A lot of setup.
At this point, we didn't really know what was going on with the vaults. Like, we didn't know that a lot of the people from 31 are pre-war. So
we don't know about 31 yet. We don't know what's in 31. We don't know we just know that
they did give us
there's something about 31. We don't know what's with 31. But we know that
is pre-war apparently.
We know that there's apparently going to be a vault that controls all the vaults because that's where Barb wants to be.
Mm-hmm.
And and then we know that from this episode we're learning about how Vault Tech is going to manipulate politics for profit. And that's what makes them evil. Well, it's not the only thing that makes them evil, but so far
there's a lot.
That's just the beginning. We're learning how Barb obviously plays a very significant role at Vault-Tec, but she does not talk about her job with Coop. He knows nothing. And everything that he feels is the right thing to do for their family, she's just like, no, that's not it. Everything for their family's future depends on Vault-Tec.
Right.
And he's like, I just don't understand how everything depends on Vault-Tec. Like, in his mind, that doesn't make any sense because he doesn't know anything about Vault-Tec because she doesn't tell him anything. And you would think even if you worked at a very super secret corporation, blah, blah, blah. I know like a lot of people are sworn to secrecy and they sign NDAs. You still tell your spouse stuff, even a little bit, because they're your spouse. They're like the person that you trust above all anyone, which means she doesn't trust him. She can't trust him because she knows if he knows things, he'll probably go off the deep end. He's already starting to. And she's trying to rein him in. She's trying to manage him. Not quite successfully at this point. Like, she doesn't know that he's run off to this meeting just to hear him out. And he even says, I probably won't stay. He's not quite buying what Charlie's telling him, but he's buying it enough to go see what's up, which that is a big step for him. It's a huge step for him. So, and then for us to see that Moldaver, this is the first time we learned that Moldaver's been alive for 200 years.
Yeah.
How? We don't know. So this is interesting. And of course, it's the first time the ghoul has figured out that she's been alive for 200 years too. Now, he hasn't seen, well, he has. No, has he seen her in real life? I don't think so. No, he hasn't. He hasn't seen her. He's only seen her picture, which, to be fair, is a hand drawing. But they don't say that she's a ghoul. So, and nobody has said that she's a ghoul. So he's thinking, well, she's still around and she's not a ghoul. How does that work? But it just tells him that, he probably thinks that there's a really good chance that his wife is still around because we know he's still looking for her.
Well, and what's the present? He just says her. He doesn't. It's kind of
he
insinuated
does.
that he's
It could
talking about
mean
his wife,
he may not be looking for Barb. He might not care about her, but he's obviously going to be looking for Janie.
Yeah.
But the way they say her, it makes you think that he's looking for a lover.
Yeah, it's like
because the way they say it with like a little sneer. Like, I don't think they would say that if they were referring to their daughter, with a sneer like that. And of course, if he finds Barb, he'll find Janie. You would think. So, and maybe he wants his revenge on Barb. We don't know. We don't know what their relationship is like at this point. If it's amicable or if he's like, if I see you again, I'll kill you. We don't know. We don't know if he tolerates her because they have a daughter together. We have no idea what their relationship is like yet. We only know that they're divorced and that he owes alimony, which he must have been making some really good money to be paying her alimony because I'm imagining that she probably makes decent money at Vault-Tec for being an executive. So why he owes her alimony, unless the laws were different. Maybe it's just because I feel like at this point, if he's not getting a lot of work, either he's cleaning up on royalties or they're just, I don't know, it's just some kind of crappy law that says he's got to pay her alimony even if she's making more money. But child support would count. I don't know. I don't know divorce law, fortunately. But
I know a little bit, but not to that degree.
Yeah, I mean, I only know what I hear friends go through. So
right.
But it's like, so we're seeing there's things for us that we're seeing about the state of the world, what Vault-Tec is doing. There are things that Cooper is starting to see. We know that his friends all bought in, he knows what's up and he's bought in. His other friend, if you were to take Sebastian to a meeting, I'll bet he would be like, yep, I that's it. It's a product, and he would get it. He would understand. I'm sure Sebastian wouldn't be hard to convince that this is what was going on because he already has that, the old way is the past, forget your ethics or your values or whatever. You're a product, I'm a product. The end of the world is a product. We just sell products now. That's what we do. And, Vault-Tec is selling vaults. Okay, that's what they do. And I guess no matter, he doesn't really say it's fair enough to do whatever you got to do to sell your product. He doesn't say that, but he would probably understand that, which is creepy. But, I mean, all's fair in capitalism, right?
Apparently.
And when we get to, I think it's episode 8, where we see the boardroom, it apparently is all fair in capitalism.
I think Isn't part of that in the next episode as well? I don't know. I haven't watched
I
it
think
since
I
the first
think
time.
the next episode focuses more on 31.
Okay.
I think 8 is more of the we find out about what happens at Vault-Tec. If I remember right.
Well, it's been a while. I'll be watching it soon, though.
Yeah, we'll be watching it soon because we'll be discussing episode 7 next.
Yes.
So tell us what you think about what's happening. The Shady Sands ritual is weird, but it's fine.
Very.
It seems like something. So obviously Moldaver runs this cultish kind of thing, and apparently she runs the remnants of the NCR, at least in this area, is what it looks like. And these people, are they performing this ritual? Because, I mean, they have her face up there. They call her the Flame Mother. I don't know if they know that she's over 200 years old, and that's why they think she's so great, and they all follow her, because it's like, hey, I've been around since before the war, so you should follow me. I don't know if that's like the deal. I'm not sure how she gets all these people to follow her. If it's just because she makes sense, because obviously people followed her before the war, too.
Yeah.
And I forget, like, what was her profession then?
I don't think they ever really say.
They might say with the meeting in the next episode. Or I'll look and see if anybody else caught that. We're getting down towards the end, and it's getting good.
2 more episodes left. Kind of hard to believe.
Getting good. I mean, this episode was a very big setup. Like, it's setting up a lot of stuff that's going to start rolling in the next 2 episodes. And, you know, there wasn't a lot of music in this episode because it was a lot of foreboding. It was a lot of some creepy scenes. It was a lot of very intense scenes. So it wasn't a lot of the fun, happy Fallout music that we hear. So I noticed that too when watching it again, was like, there's not a lot of songs here. There's not a lot of like fun breaks. I felt like the music in this series was used a lot as like a tension break or something like that, and there was none of that. There was not a lot of that in this episode.
No,
not much at all. Like 3 songs, I think, in total, and most of those were reserved for like the party scene and for Maximus checking out his digs, and then the very end with Max. I mean, Maximus got all the music. Seemed like so.
Yeah, which I guess were the more happy scenes and less foreboding.
It was, yeah.
So,
and it's interesting, like in the beginning, Maximus is like, we gotta go. This place, no, there's something wrong here. We gotta go. And Lucy's like, no, it's safe. It's great. And then at the end, she's like, we gotta go. We gotta go. He's like, no, it's great. It's safe. So it's really funny to see how they flip. And that's because, you know, Birdie was able to manipulate Max into thinking this is this, you know, you want to stay.
Yeah.
And, you know, because Lucy didn't stay out of level 12, like she was told, she learned that there was something going on. And now she thinks this is not a safe place. Otherwise, she would probably be like, yeah, that's great. Let's just stay here forever. You know, who knows? Maybe they would both give up on the head and just let whatever happened happen. Who knows? If she hadn't figured out what was going on in level 12, and she was like, this is a safe place. And then he bought in, this is safe. Maybe they would have given up on looking for the head. Who knows? Wouldn't that have been interesting?
Yeah. I didn't even think about that.
Could have skipped a whole lot of stuff, but nope. No. We're going to go through that stuff. So, so anyway, we'll be back with episode 7 soon.
Yep.
So let us know what you think. Like, rate, rate, subscribe, whatever. Thank you.
All that podcasty and
all the
stuff,
things that everybody tells you to do. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. We'll see ya. Thanks and have a great day.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
This podcast is part of the Robots Radio Rocket Club, a program designed to help all podcasts reach their full potential. For information about joining the Robots Radio Rocket Club, check out robotsradio.net.
Hi, I'm Aaron.
And I'm Ariel.
And we're the hosts of the Legend of Zelda Lorecast, podcast about all things Legend of Zelda, from Errol to Zora,
and all the fun things in between.
If you're ready to dive deep and learn more about the Legend of Zelda lore and everything surrounding it, come join us on Legend of Zelda Lorecast. You can find us on Apple iTunes, Spotify, Google, or wherever else you get your podcasts.
We hope to see you soon.